So this video is to answer some of the questions that I've got from people as an author. The first ones are from Jenny. How do you get inspiration for your stories and characters is my first one, or her first one. It's a bit of a combination actually. I try not to use living people that I know or anything like that. Like, you wouldn't find yourself put whole into one of my stories. But I must admit that I do, I guess my mind kind of stores up interesting things that happen, or interesting things that individual people might do. And they might pop out in a character at some point, whether I actually plan that to happen or not. That certainly does happen. In a lot of cases, the characters, I guess they almost stem from the story, so I kind of have an idea of what story I want to write. And then I develop my main characters based on perhaps somebody who perhaps can grow from the situation, or who has a character that would respond well to the situation, something like that. The inspiration for the actual stories, that's a tricky one as well. I kind of go along with the idea of Stephen King's, that you start with a what if. So I might sometimes think about a genre that I want to write, or so that might be a starting point, and then I kind of ask myself what if. So for at the moment I'm researching the sequel for Land of Fire, and I'm having a lot of fun saying, what if the Vikings got to a different continent again compared to Australia, and what sort of interesting things are there, and what would happen if they, if their culture mixed with the culture of the people who were already there, and so on. So yeah, so I might go with the original idea, or new things might spring up for me as I go along. So what music do I listen to while writing? Well, I have a shuffle on my iTunes. That's where I do my writing at the computer. I like fairly gentle music, and because I don't want my attention taken away too much, so I listen to quite a lot of meditation music and folk music, things like that. But it's all music that I really like. So some music like Missy Higgins I actually associate with certain books I've written, because I listened to so much Missy Higgins while I was writing. Which particular book was that? Might have been Land of Fire, I think. And yeah, that really, so every time I hear Missy Higgins now, I kind of think of the characters from that book. That's how much I listened to it at the time. What is the best thing about being an author? I think it's being able to just be in other worlds and in other minds, and it's better than playing video games, really, because I get to make stories, and to me the characters become very real, and so that's really good. That's something I really like about it. And because I have a bit of a spiraling mind, I really like that writing novels keeps my mind on a very positive kind of track. When it's having a spiral, it can be having a spiral about something I'm writing. So that's very good. Monica asked, is there a part of your brain that is always in writer mode, or can you switch that off and take a break? I can definitely switch it off. I tend to find when I'm right in the throes of writing a first draft that if my mind's not actually on something else, it will be writing. It will be coming up with ideas, or it will be working with the scenario that I left the story at when I finished writing for that day, or something like that. But I'm certainly not walking through the day kind of thinking, oh, I should write that, or I should put this in here, or whatever. Most of the time I'm just living my life. So is there a best time of day for me to write, or does it not matter? Well, for me, I like to get writing in the morning. I do find that my thinking is best in the morning, and because I see it as one of the things on my to-do list for the day, I kind of just try to get through it a little bit early in the day, so that then I can do other things. I'm very happy to edit and things like that and rewrite in the afternoons, but it just feels sometimes in the morning that I do my best sort of, you know, first draft work, I guess, if you like. Freya, the very first novel that I ever wrote, was written pretty much in the evenings because I was studying teaching and on the weekends and things like that. So it is possible to write at other times of the day, but if I have the choice, I would write in the morning. Do I have a set timetable? Do I write at certain times, morning or night, say Monday to Friday or any day of the week, or does it not matter what time or day? Well, these days I set myself a rule of about 1,000 words a day of a first draft, which can take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, something like that. It's quite tiring work because every word you write is practically decisions are having to be made about what you're describing, what they're saying, what impressions you're giving, how much description do you add, and so on. So it's quite a brain draining kind of thing. So for me at this time, with lots of other things going on in my life, I like to write about 1,000 words a day, and I do that Monday to Friday, and then if I miss a day for some reason, I will do it on the weekend instead. So I guess I'm getting about 5,000 words a week, and that would be fairly steady. So Barbara asked, how do I choose the names of my characters? Well, I tend to try not to let choosing names of characters slow me down too much. So my main characters, I've probably spent a bit of time working out what names I like, and it can be really random. Like I just run ideas around in my head until I think of one I like. I used to like having the phone books because when it came to surnames, I would just flick through like the white pages until I came to a surname that I liked, and I would use that. But first names I tend to be a little bit more picky about. For other characters, it's really because I think to myself, I don't like to be slowed down by spending too much time on that sort of thing when I'm actually in the first draft, because if you keep that flow going, then the words are much better and the story runs really well. So I quite often come up with a name just off the top of my head, and when I get to the end of the book and I get into the second draft or whatever, I might decide that I don't like that name and I will change that. And nowadays it's quite easy to do that with find and replace. So I don't let it slow me down too much if I can't quite come up with a name that I like or whatever on the first draft. But in a lot of cases I end up sticking with the name. So because by the time you finish writing the book, that character might have developed to match that name or something like that. But not every time. PJ asked if I could introduce a female hero like Lily in Land of Fire into a famous book or story, or change an existing character, which book or story would it be or why? Now that was a really interesting question. I really tried to think about how I might do that. You know, I mean, there's Tess of the D'Urbervilles is one of the books that I did at school, and she was so wet, she drove me mad. I did it at uni actually. And but if you think to yourself, well, if I'd thrown a character like Lily into that story, you're not taking into account the cultural effect of her life and the position she found herself in and the role of women in those days and things, and you couldn't really say that Lily would act differently to that. However, in real life, I do actually often say to myself, what would Freya do? Because if you want your life to be a little bit more spontaneous and fun, then thinking to yourself what would Freya do is actually a really good thing to do, because Freya doesn't give a damn and Freya has a lot of fun. And that's been quite a good, I don't know what you would call it, I guess, well, I don't know, I guess a life example for me. I was fairly well behaved as a young person, and I think tapping into Freya a little bit does me a lot of good. So yeah, so they're the questions. I hope that was interesting to you, and thanks very much for asking them. Bye!